Afternoon. Today we're going to be talking a lot about COVID because there's a fair amount of news today about COVID. Let me begin by talking about the numbers here. So in the city of St. Louis yesterday we had 103 new cases. Now if you look back over the last 3 or 4 days, you'll see that it's ranged anywhere from 73 to 103 cases per day. And so our case count is going up daily. But the important thing, well, a lot of important things here, is that of the number of people currently hospitalized, that with confirmed COVID cases in the region is 240 individuals. This information's 2 days old. You all know that, I think. But it has been as high, within the last couple of weeks, it's been as high as 260, and today down around 240. Of that, 59 people in the region were in the ICU, 28 were on ventilators, and 36 people were admitted 2 days ago, so Friday, to the hospital. We are running new hospital admissions for a 7-day rolling average of about 39 to 40. It's varying a little bit. But that was one of the indicators that we said that we were going to rely on and that we are going to rely on for making some additional changes. Now, you may know that City of St. Louis, we announced just a little while ago that when folks make a complaint about a business that they believe is not following either the social distancing and or the face covering mask requirements, our health department follows up on those complaints. The initial follow-up is often through a telephone call, then a visit, education to that business, and the vast majority of the time those businesses come into compliance once we have a conversation with them and educate them and make sure that they know the things that they're supposed to be doing. Last week, it was last Monday, in fact, a week ago, we issued letters to half a dozen or so businesses that were pretty seriously not following the guidelines. So then, as some of you know, if you're on social media, we saw over the weekend that some of those businesses are continuing not to follow the guidelines. And so today, later on this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning, our health department will be issuing letters to a few of those businesses saying that they have to close for 2 weeks. This is a very serious step that we never wanted to have to take, but we are seeing increases in cases significantly. We are seeing high hospitalization numbers, 40 on average, 7-day, and we have tried to bring people into compliance. And so at this point, we believe that those businesses that are not complying will need to close for 2 weeks. Back after a little drink of water there. So that is a step that we did not want to have to take, but we feel it is necessary. And we hope that other businesses will get the message and come in line. So many businesses have been working so hard to follow the guidelines. We're trying to avoid shutting down a whole classification of businesses. We don't think that's the fair thing to do. We're just using what I would call more of a surgical approach to this rather than a blanket approach. More water. So I hope that all of you understand that. We are not going to announce those businesses today because they have not yet been notified. We think it's fair that those business owners receive notification first, and we are really hoping that all the other businesses that are reluctant to comply will come into compliance. And I want to just end by thanking all those businesses who every single day are working hard to comply with the social distancing requirements, to comply with the mask requirements. I know there are a lot of those businesses out there. We also see them on social media, sometimes putting out a message to their customers, hey, you know, if you're sick, if you're symptomatic, if you know, don't come, and if you do come, bring your mask. Expect to socially distance. Those businesses deserve to be commended, really, for doing what's necessary to tamp down the spread of COVID. We have very few levers left to use, and I've talked about this before. Mask wearing is one, and social distancing is one of those levers. So you have seen that City of St. Louis is a little different than St. Louis County. City of St. Louis, we have a number of large venues. We also have a number of large clubs and nightclubs, and that's a little different than St. Louis County. But we want to make sure that those businesses can continue to operate as long as they comply with the guidelines. I've got something popped up on the screen. Do we have an issue here?
Huh. No.
We think not.
Run later. There you go.
Okay. There we go. So we're going to take this surgical approach with the businesses here in St. Louis and close those businesses that are not complying, and thank those businesses that are continuing to comply. It's about, of course, it's about protecting people's health. It's also trying not to put even more people out of work. We know that yesterday I think it was, is when the federal unemployment ended for people. That was the additional $600 that folks who had been laid off because of COVID were being able to get per week. That is now ended. I know that Congress, just today, I've read a few things, that they are now beginning to talk about how they might be able to help people, continue to help people, be able to pay their rent, be able to pay their utilities. But the one thing that we don't want to do is put good people out of work when their businesses are complying. So that's really the message today for COVID. And, well, let me say just a little bit more here. And I mentioned this on Friday, I think, as well. We're looking at our case counts daily, of course, but we also have looked back over the past 30 days. So the 30 days from June 28th up to today, what we're seeing is still 64% of the cases that we've received are people under 40 years old. The highest age range here is people in their 20s. They are running at 31% of our total cases. So that 9 years, 20 through 29, or maybe that's 10 years, 20 through 29, they're running at 31% of the cases. You would not think that that would be the case, but that is, and then people in their 30s are running about 23.5%. And then you've got people under the age of 20 who are running at about 9% of the total cases, and that's how you get to the 64%. Fortunately, I guess I would say it in this way, people in their 60s only account for 6% of the cases, 70s count for 4%, 3.7%. So it does appear that older folks have taken to heart the social distancing, the mask wearing, and keeping your circle small. not expanding that circle out to people that have more exposure. But we've got to get better compliance in the 20s and the 30s, so that, because those folks can get it too, and they can be asymptomatic, some, and they can bring it home or bring it to their workplace and infect additional folks that may have underlying health conditions or may be older and therefore very much more susceptible to having a very adverse outcome with COVID. So that's it for COVID today. I bet we're going to have a lot of questions about that. I do want to mention one other thing before we go to questions, and that is that, you know, it was a violent weekend in St. Louis. 7 people were killed, 23 were injured. This is across the region. 4 of our officers were fired upon by an individual who fortunately they were able to take into custody. 1 officer was hit with a shotgun shot buck in the elbow, in the arm, and but others were also hurt when the car rammed their vehicle. And so we are appreciative of the work that our police do. They were at that time trying to address a gathering and an incident at a gas station quick shop that was here near downtown, just a little bit north of downtown, 13th Street. And they were trying to address that when they were fired upon. And so just appreciative of the work that our police officers do for us every day, and wishing them a really speedy and a full recovery. But I think it's worth mentioning that, you know, the gun violence in our city, our city's under a lot of stress, and that plays out in many different ways. One of the ways it plays out is more disputes, more personal disputes, more gunfire. And as you all know, we are seeing that in every major city across the U.S. And it's so tragic for the individuals, for the families, for the friends of those individuals, because it doesn't just affect one person, it affects a whole group. So thank you to those officers. So Jacob, do we have questions?
Quite a few questions,
Okay.
Mayor, as you might expect.
Sure.
So, Stephen is watching, and Stephen has a wedding in 19 days. And like St. Louis County announced today, 25% capacity limits. He's curious what the capacity limits are going to be or are in the city of St. Louis.
So Stephen, congratulations on your wedding in 19 days. I don't know if your wedding's in the city of St. Louis.
Didn't say.
Hopefully. 19 days is a long time away. I hope that we don't have to put strict capacity guidelines in place. We still, I'm sure, will have social distancing and have masks in place. We are recommending that personal social gatherings, so what is that? It's maybe a barbecue in your backyard, it's a birthday party, it's meeting up with people in the park. Those personal social gatherings, we are really recommending that you keep those as small as possible, 10 or fewer, so that you can keep your circle as small as possible. If we can turn the corner on this COVID, we won't have to put more restrictions in place, but that really is completely dependent on our behavior. So even at your wedding, I don't know how large your wedding is. Hopefully it's a small wedding, family, close friends, maybe outdoors. We know that being outdoors is better than being indoors. In fact, we are recommending, this is off your subject a little bit, but we are recommending that if you have, if you want to go out to a restaurant to get a bite to eat, try to sit outdoors if you possibly can. It's just a little bit safer. Even outdoors, you need to socially distance. So it is hard to say what the requirements will be that's almost 3 weeks away. So you must be getting married on what, Saturday, maybe the 15th, something like that?
Whatever 19 days is.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's, almost 3 weeks. So congrats on that, and everybody socially distance and wear a mask.
Question from Nicholas, is another stay-at-home order out of the question?
Nicholas, it's not out of the question, but we certainly are trying to do everything we can to avoid it. But it isn't out of the question.
Question from Lindy, what are contact tracers learning? Are they finding cases in bars and restaurants or retail stores? Who's the biggest culprit?
You know, Dr. Eccles, we were going to have Dr. Eccles on with us today, but he's tied up doing something else. And what he would tell you is that this is full community spread. Yes, we are seeing cases in bars and restaurants, but people are out and about so much that it's very hard to actually recall every place you've been in the last week and everyone you've been around in the last week. And so we know that there's a lot of exposure happening in the bar situation where you have lots of people, nobody's socially distanced and nobody's wearing a mask. So we know that that is the case. There's also, of course, community spread at the office if people aren't wearing their mask. But you know, we always wear masks here in the office, and I take mine off to do this just so that you can understand what I'm saying better. But we are all wearing masks here. So the data tells us that you can get it anywhere.
Are there any other measures the city's considering similar to how St. Louis County imposed a 10 p.m. curfew on bars and restaurants?
So the way we have approached this is to issue an order for those bars that are really ignoring the social distancing and the mask wearing, for them to close. And we're trying to do this so that we don't have to go towards a blanket approach. Because we believe there are so many bars and restaurants who are doing a good job. And so to put a sort of a curfew, if you will, on them is, I think, a little bit extreme, at least for the city of St. Louis at this time. Now, we are looking at whether or not places should stay open really late. You know, St. Louis has a 3 a.m. liquor license possibility, and we have about 90 locations, bars, restaurants, who have a 3 a.m. license. And, you know, one of the things that we are looking at is, well, should we pull back on that or not? There has not been a decision made about that, but we are seriously considering that. You know, there's an old saying, and it's old, but there's some truth to it. Nothing good happens after midnight. I know that there's fun to be had after midnight, but in the middle of a pandemic, we really have to curtail that.
People may want to steer clear of the businesses who were attempting to shut down. So Tanner's question is, when and will the city release the names of businesses that have been forced to close?
We will release their names. We're just not going to do it until they've all received notifications.
What is a way, in light of the news today, Mayor, what is a way that people or members of the public can let the city know about various COVID-19 violations?
Yes, the public, in fact, we get a lot of information from the public. The best thing to do, and can we just post this on the thread? There's a link where you can report information that you have seen. You can also call it in to 622-4800. That's 314-622-4800. And through that, that's the Citizen Service Bureau. You can upload pictures and you can upload videos if you go online and do it in that way. So, I mean, that's frankly our health department inspectors use those complaints in order to call and visit businesses and instruct them and try to get them into compliance.
Kevin and Shelley have questions about masks. Mayor, you tell people to wear the dang mask, and they worry it's not working. How can the city be more aggressive, and will they consider fines about wearing the mask?
We might consider fines. Very difficult, though, if you think about how that would actually work out. We're really, our businesses have unfortunately borne the brunt of some of this in terms of not having people come in without wearing a mask, because they're indoors and you're walking through their front door. So we might consider some kind of a fine. We're hoping not to do that. We just need for people to comply. I see when I'm out and about, the vast majority of people are wearing masks now. Sometimes they're not, they've got a chin strap on instead of their full mask. But I think most people are doing pretty well with it. But what we are seeing is that there are locations where people are not wearing masks, and so we're taking a surgical approach to this.
We got a question about schools, Mayor. Michelle's question is, how is the city help schools, or is helping schools with technology, socioeconomic disparities, and the digital divide among students and families who are facing the difficult decision about going back in the fall?
Yes. So we're working daily with the schools. We have issued guidelines for the schools for reopening. Those were issued a couple of, maybe 3 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago now. I think everybody is continuing to think about whether or not in-person school should open. It's a very complex issue because, of course, some in-class learning is preferable if it can be done safely for both the students, the teachers, and the staff at the schools. And so small groups are required. Some schools are offering either in-person class or virtual learning. Some schools, not St. Louis Public Schools, there was a misunderstanding about that on Friday, but some schools in our region are offering a hybrid method. Other schools are offering just virtual. So all of these school superintendents are struggling with this question. And, it goes to, does the family have internet service at home? Do they have fast enough internet service? Does the child have an iPad or a Chromebook or, a device that they can use? Do they have the skills to be able to get that internet to work with that device and get online? That requires a lot of our school employees. And so we are working to help them with that, but they are the folks that are on the front line with kids and with families, because they know who those families and those kids are. So, here we are on the 27th of July. Some schools are starting in 3 weeks, some schools starting in about a month. And so all of them, I think, are, as we look at these numbers going up, are really trying to make the best decision for the kids.
2 clarifying questions. Alyssa asked about weddings and big events like that. Are there technically new rules on gatherings, or are people being advised to stick to the under 10 rule?
So that's a little confusing. Personal social gatherings is you're being advised to keep as small as possible. Right now, there is not, if you're having a wedding, so say you're having the wedding in the church, there's not a limit, there's not a 10-person limit on that today. There is still the limit that you must be 6 feet apart. That means every other pew. That means 2 people on the end of this pew, 1 person on the end of this pew. That means the layout and the seating has to be really distanced. So It's not a percentage requirement. What it is a social distancing requirement, and that will, by its very definition, mean that you'll have a lot fewer people in that venue.
Kayla's question is, are there currently capacity limits on businesses, or does the 75% just apply to our larger venues and special events?
75% applies to large venues. The capacity limits on businesses have to do with what you can do and be socially distant.
I think that's all for questions today, Mayor.
That's all? Good. Thank you all. Appreciate all of you tuning in today. Appreciate the hard work that you're all doing, or 99.9% of you are doing, to wear a face covering and to maintain social distance. Keep your groups small, keep your social gatherings small and with people that are in your very close circle. And let's drive these